What if the most honest version of your life wasn't, what you showed the world, but was actually hidden in the letters and emails you never meant anyone else to read?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a heavy thought right out of the gate.
I mean, think about that for a second. We spend so much of our energy, curating this perfectly polished, public-facing persona for the people around us.
Right, the whole social media highlight reel.
Exactly. We polish our profiles, we rehearse what we're going to say at dinner parties, we put on this brave face for our families. But then there is that other version of you.
The unfiltered version.
Yeah, the version of you that only really comes out when nobody is looking. And that exact digital footprint, like the drafts, the deleted texts, the unsaid apologies, that is the entire foundation of this huge new novel by Virginia Evans called The Correspondent.
Which is just such a brilliant concept for a book.
It totally is. And today we are taking a deep dive into why this quiet, seemingly actionless 2025 debut has just become, well, one of the most intensely debated literary works of the last few years.
It really has taken the literary world by storm.
It has. So we're going to be looking at critical literary analyses, some thematic breakdowns, and a ton of reader reviews to figure out if this is the right kind of read for you to pick up next.
Because the premise really taps into this profound vulnerability.
Yeah.
Like, we leave this sprawling, invisible paper trail of our true psychological state, right? Scattered across all these servers and hard drives, completely fragmented. And to understand how Evans captures this, we really have to examine the architecture of the novel itself, because that is dictating exactly how readers are responding to it.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we praise the architecture of this book, I have to throw a flag on the play here.
Uh-oh.
Because this is an epistolary novel, right? Which means it's built entirely out of scattered emails and letters. There's no traditional narrator to hold our hand.
Right, not at all.
We don't get, descriptive prose about the weather or a character's facial expressions. And honestly, part of me always wonders if writing a book entirely in emails is just, I don't know, kind of a lazy way for an author to avoid doing the hard work.
The hard work of, traditional world building.
Yeah, like building actual scenes, writing real dialogue, staging character interactions. It almost seems like a shortcut.
Well, it's a fair suspicion.
Yeah.
I mean, if handled poorly, it absolutely can be a crutch.
Right.
But looking at the critical consensus across our sources, the exact opposite is happening here. What's fascinating here is how this format actually changes readers' opinions on epistolary novels.
Right.
Removing the narrator is actually a high-wire act for an author.
Really? How so?
Because you lose all your traditional tools for exposition. You can't just tell the reader, these two characters are growing apart.
Oh, I see. You have to literally prove it.
Exactly. You have to prove it through the mechanics of their correspondence. So the epistolary format forces you, the reader, into this highly active role. You're not passively receiving a story.
You're actively investigating a life.
Yes. It makes it feel like real life, with this perfect balance of sadness and humor, rather than some staged dramatic story.
I love that. It almost feels less like reading a curated novel and more like discovering a diary in a thrift store, or accidentally finding an unlocked phone on the subway.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. You're recovering fragmented data one piece at a time. And it makes me wonder if part of the book's massive appeal is just human voyeurism, like our inherent desire to snoop on unfiltered reality.
There's definitely a voyeuristic thrill to it. The tension isn't about waiting for some manufactured plot twist.
It's about waiting to see if that final file you open is going to reveal, a computer virus or a vital, beautiful memory. You basically become a digital forensic analyst.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize the reading experience. The tension relies entirely on the metadata of human interaction. Reviewers repeatedly point out how Evans uses the literal structure of an inbox to build psychological realism.
Like the timestamps and things like that.
Exactly. For instance, the silence between messages becomes a critical plot point. If an email goes unanswered for 3 weeks, you have to stop and ask yourself why.
Wow, yeah. The format literally trains you to look for the gaps.
It does. You start noticing the subtle punctuation choices.
Yeah.
Or the shift from a really warm sign-off to a cold professional regards. You have to read the negative space.
But I mean, a format like that is just a gimmick if the person writing the emails is boring.
True.
How does the author actually keep us invested in someone just sitting alone at a keyboard? Because, let's be real, If I wanted to read mundane emails, I could just open my own laptop and stare at my work inbox.
Fair point, and that is where the protagonist, Sybil Van Antwerp, comes into play.
Right, Sybil.
The critical analyses really highlight her character as the engine of the entire novel. Sybil is a retired lawyer in her 70s.
Which is super rare, right?
Unbelievably rare. In contemporary fiction, having an older female lead explored with such unapologetic emotional depth is just not common. Often, older women in literature are sort of relegated to supporting roles.
Yeah, like the quirky grandmother or the wise elder who just dispenses advice.
Sybil is the center of gravity here. She is fiercely intelligent, highly guarded, and deeply, deeply flawed.
So what does this all mean for how she interacts with people? Because I was thinking about her background as a lawyer and how that must shape like every single word she types.
It completely shapes it.
Because Sybil spent decades of her life cross-examining people, looking for weaknesses in arguments, protecting her clients by basically compartmentalizing her own emotions. It almost feels like she retired from the courtroom, but she never actually stopped practicing law. She just sort of turned her legal strategies on her own family, like she's treating them like opposing counsel.
Oh, she absolutely treats emotional vulnerability as a legal liability. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the thematic breakdown suggests that Sybil is an avatar for a very specific type of modern condition.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, through her correspondence, we uncover a life that has been marked by a tragic loss, one she has just never fully confronted. The book explores the broader themes of the architecture of grief, and specifically how grief calcifies when it's carried silently for decades.
Wait, let's look at how that actually works in the text. You mentioned earlier that the author uses the mechanics of the inbox to show us things rather than tell us.
Right.
How does the book physically show us that calcified grief without a narrator just coming out and saying, hey, Sybil was still sad?
It is entirely in the timing and the evasions. The sources note this fascinating recurring pattern in Sybil's inbox.
Okay.
When her daughter brings up a specific painful memory, let's say a reference to a past family vacation, the text doesn't say Sybil was upset. Instead, the reader just sees the timestamps. Sybil usually replies to emails within a few hours, right? But suddenly, she takes 11 days to respond.
Wow, 11 days of just silence.
Exactly. And when she finally does reply, she completely ignores the memory. She pivots instead to this dry, logistical question about property taxes.
That is heartbreaking.
It is. The delay is the emotional reaction. The avoidance is the grief. Evans mechanically demonstrates how Sybil builds this fortress out of mundane tasks to avoid touching the radioactive core of her trauma.
She drafts her responses like she's filing a legal brief to block a line of questioning. She anticipates where the conversation is going and deliberately stonewalls it.
Precisely.
But that creates a huge paradox, doesn't it? Like, we live in this hyper-connected world where you can email anyone on the planet in a second, yet Sybil is using that exact same communication tool to enforce her own profound isolation.
It's the modern paradox of loneliness in a hyper-connected world. She's drowning in communication but starving for connection.
Which brings up a detail from the sources that literally just stopped me in my tracks.
Which one?
Sybil actually connects more easily and more honestly with complete strangers than she does with her own daughter.
Yes. That is such a crucial part of the book.
She'll send these deeply philosophical, highly revealing, multi-paragraph emails to, like, customer service representatives or distant acquaintances on forums, but she can barely manage a 2-sentence reply to her own family. Why on earth is it easier to confess the deepest secrets of your soul to the customer service rep for a blender company than to your own flesh and blood?
It really comes down to the sociology of what we call weak ties and the concept of psychological safety.
Okay, unpack that for me.
In our social networks, our strong ties, our family and close friends, carry heavy historical baggage. For Sybil, her family represents her past. They were there for the tragedy.
Right.
They remember the mistakes she made, the times she failed, the pain they caused each other. So every single interaction with her daughter is loaded with decades of precedent.
They have a permanent file on her. If she tries to change her narrative, they'll just pull out the receipts and say, that is not who you are.
Yes, exactly. A stranger, however, is a total blank slate. Strangers don't hold our past against us.
That makes so much sense. To the reader reviews reveals a massive contradiction. You look at the early 2026 reception, and the critics are literally split into two completely opposite camps.
Totally polarized.
One side is loudly declaring it the best book of the year, calling it this unput-downable page-turner that they just devoured in a single weekend.
Right.
But then the other side is deeply frustrated. They're complaining about this agonizingly slow pace, the suffocating emotional tone, and the total lack of any traditional plot or action.
It is a textbook example of a pacing paradox.
Mm-hmm.
How can a book with zero external action be described by half its audience as a thrilling page-turner, and by the other half as entirely stagnant?
So if someone listening right now is trying to decide whether to add this to their cart, how do we break down who this is actually for?
Well, based on the data from the sources, the recommendation is a resounding yes, but with clear parameters.
Okay, lay them out.
You will likely love this book if you are a fan of literary fiction, if you crave character-driven stories over plot-driven ones, and if you appreciate reflective narratives that deal with the realities of aging and the messy mechanics of human relationships.
So a slow burn.
Yes, if you want to dive deep into the psychology of a wonderfully complex, older female protagonist, this is absolutely for you.
And on the flip side, we have to be honest. If your favorite genre is like high-stakes fantasy or fast-paced psychological thrillers, or if you read to go on an adventure that moves at breakneck speed, this book is going to seriously test your patience.
It definitely will.
If you need straightforward storytelling with clear heroes, villains, and a neat resolution tied up with a bow, you should probably skip this one. It demands a reader who is willing to sit in the quiet moments.
It does require patience.
Yeah.
But for those willing to engage with the format, the payoff seems to be universally described as profoundly impactful.
As we wrap up our deep dive into Sybil's inbox, we really need to distill what Virginia Evans is ultimately trying to tell us. Because beyond the clever format and the polarizing pacing, there is a specific message here about what actually makes up a human life. And I think the true aha moment from the sources goes much deeper than just saying, oh, life is about the quiet moments.
It does. The overarching takeaway from the thematic analyses explores this concept of the unexpressed thought. The book argues that the heaviest burdens we carry are not the things we say, but the things we type out, stare at, and then delete.
Wow. Yeah.
The empty space in our digital lives, the unanswered emails, the deleted texts, the drafts folder. That is actually a perfect high-resolution map of our psychological trauma.
That is so true.
The book highlights, very convincingly, that even when you are in your 70s, even when you have accumulated decades of emotional baggage and these deeply entrenched defensive habits, the game is not over.
It's not too late.
Exactly. It's never too late to change your trajectory. You can drop your defenses and actually reconnect with the people you love. You just have to be willing to type the truth and bypass the drafts folder entirely.
It is a powerful reminder that our patterns aren't locked in stone just because we've been repeating them for 50 years. And that actually brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today.
Oh, let's hear it.
We have spent all this time talking about Sybil's digital footprint and what it reveals about her soul. I want you to turn that lens on yourself for a moment.
That's a scary thought.
It is. If a complete stranger were to piece together your life right now using absolutely nothing but the emails, the direct messages, and the texts you have sent over the last 12 months, what kind of story would they read?
Oh, wow.
Would they see the real you and all your messy, honest vulnerability? Or would they just see a series of carefully constructed walls, legal briefs, and polite evasions? It is definitely something to think about the next time you draft a message and hesitate before hitting send. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking for the stories hidden in everyday life, and we will catch you on the next one.
Subscribe to the Timeless Tales podcast. Your stories, your time.